Today we're here with the mod OEBYZ. This mod adds a lot of content to Byzantium. So let's get into it. To start with, as you can see, we have our 3 starting events as well as 3 different situations all happening at once. If we head over to the government screen, we can see lots of unique reforms for Byzantium, and a lot of these are pretty bad. What I really like about this mod is that it does this. Alone, the privileges have effect, but then they have scaling effects and modifiers based on certain things within your country. As we can see here, when stability is below 25%, we lose 5 max tax. When legitimacy is below 25, we lose 10% food production. When prestige is below 50, we lose 2.5 estate satisfaction. This is a really neat idea to expand these privileges to add extra effects. They aren't all bad though, like this church-state nexus privilege provides lots of bonuses if we manage to achieve certain criteria, like keeping our inflation below 15, which provides 0.05 monthly legitimacy. When it comes to our advances tree, we also have some unique advances. These are done in an interesting way as well. We need to control fully certain locations to gain access to these advances. For example, this one requires us to control all of Sicily. This one, which gives a 20% food production, requires us to control all of Egypt. Back in EU4, things like this likely would have been represented through mission trees with missions that give you bonuses based on achieving certain criteria. So it's nice to see the idea return in EU5 as advancement. We also have access to some unique vassals. Specifically, these Imperial themes. These are essentially standing armies that we can appoint to locations. Currently, they're very overpowered since they're all regulars. The trade-offs are, of course, that if they become disloyal, they'll stop supporting us in our wars, and when we create them, we no longer able to raise levies in the location they're spawned. Currently, we start with a single theme. I think I'd like to appoint 2 more. Maybe 3 total. That should be more than enough to restore Rome's glory. Let's appoint one here in Thessaly. There they are, the new theme of northern Greece. Then we'll appoint one across the strait in Optimaton. This creates the new theme of the Marmar area. We're going to need to max diplomatic spending to keep them all in check though. We start with some unique cabinet actions to reform our existing systems, giving us access to better privileges or reforms. It's going to take a while, but I think we're just going to focus on getting these reforms down as fast as possible to reform our decaying system. The Byzantium countryside is also riddled with these bandit strongholds. What's really bad about them is not only do they decrease max control, but they also decrease local food production. And one of our privileges requires us to have our food investment at least 50%. You can see here, if we drop it below 50%, the estates immediately lose 20 happiness, but more than that, because in the drop of happiness for estates, we'll start to see rebellions become a big deal. So we're going to need to keep our food spending high, which means we'd need to deal with those bandits that are reducing the amount of food we can create. Unfortunately, to suppress them, we need to spend stability and manpower. Both things we don't have a maximum supply of at the moment. Now let's look at what is essentially our biggest disaster. In our nation currently, we have 2 different forces, the military aristocrat faction and the bureaucratic faction. When our current ruler dies, if neither faction has achieved power, we will be engulfed by a civil war. So we need to choose. Do we back the military aristocrat faction and help them gain power, led by the Grand Marshal, or do we back the bureaucratic faction and have them suppress the military and the Grand Marshal? Both the military and the bureaucracy are represented as political factions within the nation. They of course provide benefits, but at the same time there is the risk of us spiraling into civil war if they're not kept in check. So really we just have to choose, which faction are we going to back? I'm going to back the bureaucratic faction, I think. If you want to see what happens if you back the military faction, you'll need to play the mod for yourself. So the way this disaster or situation sort of works is, each faction has a score. The military faction starts with 14, the bureaucratic faction starts with 10, and then we have class antagonism. The faction we want to win needs to be above the other faction's influence by the level of class antagonism. So if class antagonism was 1, we would need our preferred faction to have a score of just 1 above the other faction. Currently, class antagonism is at 3, so we'll need a score of 3 above the other faction. We do have some options here to do things. And they provide quite a bit of benefit. For example, the military being able to enlist troops gives us 250 manpower, which will be good for suppressing those bandits. Whereas dispatching the bureaucrats to collect tax will give us 300 gold straight up. So it's tempting to kind of want to press all these buttons to gain all these benefits, but we need to keep in mind that we need to keep the faction we want ahead of the other one. So we're just going to start off collecting tax to push the bureaucratic faction up to 12, but this does increase class antagonism, so we need to keep that in mind. We're also going to favour the court ministers to give us another 2 points to the bureaucratic faction in exchange for 5 stability. Now we're neck and neck with the military faction, but class antagonism is now 5, so we need to get up to 19 or lower class antagonism in order to surpass the military. That's all we can do here for now, though. When it comes to our army, in order to fully reform it and rebuild the central army, we need to do a bunch of stuff. We need to get a score of 100 for our rebuilding the army focus. And in order to do that, we need to do certain things, like an army being led by the ruler winning a battle, the Byzantine army winning a major battle. But we can also lose points, for example, by losing a battle with our army where our leader leads, or losing a major battle in general. In fact, even being diplomatic insulted will reduce our army rebuilding process. One of the things we can do is invest in armaments, which will give us an event that lets us increase our rebuilding the army focus. For now, though, I'm not going to focus heavily on rebuilding the army. We're going to rely on the themes to do a lot of our fighting, and they're going to win wars for us. So we will gain a few ticks just from winning wars. But for the moment, we're not going to rely much on our central military. The themes are going to do all the work. Instead, we're going to invest most of our manpower into suppressing these bandits and removing their bandit strongholds. We'd really just like to purify them from the land. Getting rid of all the bandits will also let us reform a certain privilege, I think. I can't remember which one, or I'm not sure which one. I think I saw it at a glance, but that's something we'll work on. Then we have access to our final situation, the Eastern trade. This is intrinsically tied to a certain privilege we have, this one. This privilege will become better or become worse based on choices we make in this situation. For example, if we reduce the coinage gold content, it will give us a large one-time income boost, but increase inflation and the collapse of commercial credit. This will make this privilege even worse. Let me show it off. For example, if we increase the coinage content, this will trigger an event here. This is bound to be an expensive undertaking, but for the long-term benefit of our economy, we must restore the gold content of our coinage and repurchase the coinage, recoin the debased currency in the hands of the people. This will restore our sacred honor and ensure our control over monetary policy in the name of the emperor. So as you can see, we'll spend gold for stability, legitimacy, and for the estate privilege to improve. If we look at the estate privilege now, it currently provides minus 10% trade income, minus 5 market attraction, and a 10% increase to income from minting, plus a little push to capital economy. So once we press this, it is now changed. We are now only losing 5% of our income from trade, but we've also lost a little bit of our minting income, 5%. As we continue to do that option, we'll be able to increase that privilege to its maximum level. We also have access to the option of selling our goods in other markets through this situation. We can choose to sell something in exchange for money. Currently, we only have access to furs and slaves. Not much of them either. So we can make some money this way. We're going to go to the Venetian market and we're going to sell them a couple of slaves in exchange for 70 gold. Venetians like slaves after all. Then we're going to create the Imperial Banking Supervision Agency. It creates a new organization called the Imperial Banking Supervision Industry. Based on the skill of the governor of this agency, or bureau, we gain modifiers. For example, at 100% admin, we gain a 10% tax efficiency bonus. We can also establish a new minting bank, which we've done so. As the emperor, we can choose who we want to lead this organization from amongst the banks subjugated to the empire. Since the skill of the bank's leader is important for how the bank functions, or the bureau, we need to make sure that we're voting for the best possible candidate. Though that's not a big issue right now because we have our starting candidate. We'll need to wait for him to die before we can start thinking about replacing him. But now we've reached the point where we're going to unpause. It's a little scary, but we're going to do it. The Turkish threat situation has of course triggered, so now we get the rise of the Turks. We also have these Serbs raiding along our borders. We can build buildings to keep them in check, While if we don't, we're going to get these periodic raids that reduce our stability control, as well as give a nasty modifier to the locations where they do it. Instead of building forts, I think we're just going to crush the Serbians immediately. As part of our Phoenix Navarra situation, we can get a casus belli to reclaim lands in the Balkans or Anatolia. And I think we're just going to get one on right now on Serbia, and we're going to attack them. This actually gives us a unique event. Based on the country you pick when doing this, you gain a unique casus belli. I've noticed you get one for Serbia and Bulgaria. This will allow us to subjugate the Serbians. We're going to declare war right away. It looks like a little bit of a close war, but it isn't going to be. We're going to let our themes do all the fighting while we sit back and just do whatever we do in the capital. We are going to call up our levies, but we're going to avoid fighting. Instead, we're going to just try and siege down some important locations. As you may recall, capturing key locations also provides points to our army rebuilding process. So if we could nab a few important spots and gain some reform progress, that would definitely be nice. We may also reinforce our themes in battle, but to be honest, they should be able to win pretty handily on their own without our intervention. With the death of the ruler of Sicily, Sicily has descended into chaos. This gives us an event to conquer these smaller nations here in southern Greece. I think we're going to do it immediately. We're going to settle the score, which results in us declaring war on all of these guys. It's going to divide our focus a little between Serbia and these little guys, but they're so little that our themes should honestly be able to do it. Athens has been reclaimed. We get a unique event and a unique building in Athens itself, the Greek co-capital, which increases local crown power and provides a local proximity source of 50, essentially like a smaller governorship in the newer patch. Now we get the Neapolitan succession crisis. This gives us a similar event to the Sicilian one, which allows us to declare war on the new, now independent nations that have spawned out of the Neapolitans. We finished some of our cabinet actions to get access to new privileges, and here they are. Some of these are quite good. In fact, they're all pretty good, so I think we're going to grab them all. I forgot to mention it, but we also have access to a unique value. We have our Roman identity value. If we go hard towards Roman identity, we gain loads of crown power as well as army morale, but a cost to adding cultures as accepted. Whereas if we go the other route, the cost of accepting cultures goes down and we get really high cultural capacity and a 0.5 research progress. That's actually really nice. Oh no, the emperor's fallen gravely ill. Where are we on the conflict? We're at 15 for the military, 24 for the bureaucrats within 9. That is exactly 9. We're going to buff the court a little bit to bring us up to 26. Now we're 11 above. Surely the emperor isn't going to immediately die though. On June 15th, 1341, the Byzantine emperor Basilius Andronicus III Pelagius passed away peacefully in the palace of Constantinople. His death marks the end of the Andronicus III era, when imperial order had been somewhat restored. A new era began. All eyes to Constantinople. John V was only 9 years old. Is he 9 right now? He's actually 8, although it'll be his birthday in 3 days, so I guess it's that, it counts. The struggle for regency power within the empire would be the empire's next focus. A regency council comprised of the Emperor Dowager Anna, Patriarch John XIV, Clecus, and Grand Duke Alexei Apuricus was formed to prevent the powerful Grand Marshal from becoming regent. No time to mourn the departed. So our ruler dies. We're now in a regency. I'm sure I've done enough to avoid the civil war. Yep, there we go. The Grand Marshal has stood down. While he was attending military affairs in France, the Regency Council purged his faction in the capital, firmly seizing control of the empire's key positions. Faced with the council's demand of surrendering his army command, the isolated Grand Marshal ultimately abandoned the option of civil war and handed over control of his forces. Considering his prestige, he was allowed to consider residing in his family's estate. Long live the legitimate line. So this changes our John Pelagius. He had the pampered child trait, but now he loses that in favor of a puppet honored as legitimate. That means he's going to have a lot lower stat growth over the course of his life, unfortunately, but it is what it is. We have finally defeated the Serbians, and now we can enforce our unique war goal, the reconquest of Serbia. This lets us annex a lot of Serbia's land and turn Serbia into a unique vassal, the Roman ally. These guys can't be annexed, but they act like normal vassals. We'll need to carry out a cabinet action to fully merge them into a vassal that we can annex. In the short term though, we've ended the raids the Serbians could carry out by integrating them. We'll need to improve relationships with the Serbians because of course they hate us. But with them subjugated, one of our immediate threats has been defeated. Next, I think it's time we look towards Anatolia. We could subjugate the Bulgarians, but that would be another quite long conflict to siege down all their forts. We also have a peace truce with them. So instead, I think it's time that we crush the Ottomans. We're going to improve our coinage a little bit. Let's take a look at what our coinage privilege currently provides. As you'll remember, it's minus 5% to our trade income, plus 5% to our minting. Now let's improve it in the name of the Emperor. I believe we reached the max level now. It's providing a state satisfaction plus 5, diplomatic reputation, trade income, and also, once we completely control the Aegean Sea, we'll gain access to 2 new cabinet actions. One to crack down on gold and silver smuggling, and the other to establish the State Mining Commission. For now, though, we're going to declare war on the Ottomans. As per usual, we're just going to leave things to our themes. While we're doing this, we're also going to begin the integration of our Roman ally. It will take a few years, but Serbia will be integrated and able to be absorbed. One of the things of note when it comes to fighting in Anatolia, if we use our unique casus belli we gain through our situation, it actually acts like a civil war. Where we occupy land, it immediately switches over to our control. This makes expanding in Anatolia very quick, as you can imagine. And since our themes are so good, we can just rely on them to just clear away the Ottoman. And there go the Otto friends. That wasn't very difficult. Before we continue our glorious advance, I'd like to create what will likely be our final Imperial theme. We'll create them in Smyrna. They will be the theme of Western Anatolia. Now, who should we go for next? Should we turn around and subjugate the Bulgarians? They don't have any allies right now, so I think it's a good idea. Let's go subjugate the Bulgarians and then we'll return to Anatolia. That was very easy. It went very fast. Now we can take the Bulgar Slayer option. This does to the Bulgarians very similar to what we did to the Serbians. Takes a large portion of their land and reduces them to a state of Bulgaria. We're still integrating the Serbians from being a Roman ally to a real puppet. So we'll probably need to deal with them first before we can turn to the Bulgarians, but they'll get their time. There, we've converted the state of Serbia to the province of Serbia, which is now a provincial subject. These guys can actually be annexed, and they'll actually be annexed rather quickly. At 16% progress a month. They do need to have a good opinion of us before they'll accept annexation, though. With them subjugated, we're now going to switch over and start integrating the Bulgarians. It's taken quite a while, but we've actually been able to max our legitimacy. This is very nice, because as I'm sure you're aware, having high legitimacy is good. But it also means a lot of our privileges that were based around legitimacy now won't cause us any issue. And with legitimacy maxed, we can now divert funds towards pushing stability up. Now, who should be our next target? I think it would likely be the Karamids here. In a way, we'd kind of like all of the Turkic tribes to unite or subjugate each other so that when we could attack them in one war only. So we kind of want to pick out ones who have allies. The Karamids don't actually have any allies. Maybe it'd be better if I go for these two because they're both allied, so we could grab them both in a single war. And that'll give us a border with Trebizond. Would always be nice to be with our fellow Trebizonese, but we're still allied with Trebizond. It's not likely they're going to get destroyed. In a similar note, actually, let's ally with Theodoro. We don't want to risk them getting annihilated. So yeah, I think we're going to go for these two small ones here. Simply because I kind of want to encourage the Karamids to conquer more land or subjugate more of these smaller guys. That way, when we eat them, we can eat them a lot of land very quickly. Ooh, the Black Death has showed up in our country. We'll need to take that into account. Just in time, John has come of age. His current successor via the Eastern Roman succession law is his uncle. But I think we're gonna crown Michael, our younger brother, as co-emperor. That if we die, he'll become the emperor. Probably for the best. Go, my legions, destroy the Mamluks. It's like I'm playing the Alexis Komnenos Glorious Finale mod for EU4. Now that we've finally got our stability up to 50%, maybe I shouldn't have been suppressing all those brigands. We can now do our main quest, continue restoring Imperial authority. This is one of the things we need to do to complete this situation. Supposedly this will trigger 3 events, I think, and give us choices. Every one that we select that increases Imperial authority restoration will give us a permanent bonus once we finish this event chain. So I think we'll go all the way and do everything we can to restore Imperial authority. Central authority returns. In the face of military defeat and internal division throughout the 13th century, the Empire's control over the countryside once hit rock bottom. Our prosperous villages became lawless worlds for local magnates and a breeding ground for conspirators and rebels. Through a series of forceful centralization measures, this phenomena has finally been curbed. Basilius John V Pelagius has declared the deterioration of the situation in the countryside has been reversed and will continue to be improved. Reverse the course of events. This gives us the dawn of the Pelagius restoration permanent modifier for the rest of the game, which increases the efficiency of our cabinet and estate satisfaction equilibrium. Now we've gained a new option in our Phoenix Navarra situation. We can make countries that are also Greek, I believe, into our vassals, that being the Roman ally sort of vassal. So if we want to integrate them fully, we'll need to complete the cabinet action to, of course, allow them to be integrated. But for now, we've allied and subjugated essentially everyone in Anatolia and the Balkans outside of a few miscreants. Now we can decide the fate of the perennial system. It's a simple choice, I guess. We either strengthen the system or destroy it. The dysfunctional perennial system is a major chronic ailment of our country. We can choose to continue strengthening the feudal characteristics of the perennial, fostering beneficial autonomy without excessive damaging centralization. Military aristocrats, supported by properly supervised military lands, will become the backbone of our army. Alternatively, we can turn the perennial into a mere title, divorcing it from its original measures and making it synonymous with a complete set of local administrative institutions. We will systematically control key local powers and advance centralization. So we can say it's proven effective so far, or we can say only centralization of the estate aperture can save Rome. This will unlock a new law, the Byzantine bureaucracy. I think we're going to say only centralization can save Rome. This switches us from the local federalization administrative law to this new Byzantine bureaucracy law, which gives us access to a new administrative headquarters. What does that do? The administrative headquarters completely saps the noble's power in the location while giving crown power and max control. But it does weaken the location. It also gives monthly prosperity. This is actually a really good building. Can we build it everywhere? I mean, yeah, actually we can. We can build it everywhere. This is the sort of building you probably want to build everywhere. Just completely sap the power of the nobility. It's quite cheap as well. It's only at 30 gold. Well, there's one place we don't really want to build it, and that's Constantinople. So let's try not to build it there. Or do we? How much power do the nobles get in Constantinople? They get quite a bit of power here. Maybe we do want to stop them getting any power in Constantinople. Let's build it and see. I'm thinking I actually want to make more themes. I said I'd only go up to 4, and they're all pretty strong now. They've got around 10,000 men each. How disloyal are they? How loyal are they? Let's have a look. They're quite close to being disloyal. Maybe not. Oh, I was tempted. More themes. Just make millions of themes, but they'd all become disloyal if I made too many. I think we've reached the sweet spot with 4. If we make any more, they'll likely become a problem. So I guess we'll just be sticking with our 4. 4 is good enough, right? We're basically the strongest nation in Europe just with these 4. But my greed and desire for expansion. Can anything keep it in check? All right, now we can finally rebuild the central army. It looks like this switches out our existing collapsed central army with the new Roman army, which looks to just be superior in every single way. Raise the eagle banners high. You also get some money, my favorite. All right, Venice, now you get yours. Time to return the land you stole from Rome. You know, I just noticed there was an option here to rebuild naval superiority. We was probably supposed to do this and take the Aegean islands that way, but we did it the old-fashioned way and just conquered them. Now we can restore the Aegean islands, unlocks guard capabilities, forcibly reclaiming the Genoan mines, and unlocks Byzantine maritime law. Byzantine maritime law looks pretty good. Proximity cost with maritime presence decreased by 1, so if we can get maritime presence high enough, the cost of control going through provinces is reduced by a simple 1. Which is definitely excellent. We've done it. We've achieved Imperial supremacy. The Balkans and Anatolia have been liberated, except for a few minor spots up here. But we've done it. The Emperor is a transcendent being above all others. We will prove this to any overweening nobles. Overweening. We will reverse the expansion of local aristocrats' power and rebuild the authority of the imperial crown. This event will include the Phoenix Navarra situation. Since 1204, we have fallen into incredible weakness. Nomads and Latins have taken turns riding roughshod over the empire. Fortunately, this terrible scene has become a thing of the past. We have successfully curbed the power of the local nobles, reorganized the central army, and driven back the Turks in Asia. Now we can proudly declare that Rome's situation is stable and it is time to begin reclaiming our ancestral lands. Rise from the ashes. We'll get rid of the 3 dukes and 9 ministers, a privilege here, which is all around bad and doesn't provide any benefits, so it's best to get rid of it. We'll also get rid of the local magnates. This one massively increases the cost of buying food and makes everyone unhappy and just gives us a few little noble levies, so it's good to get rid of that one. We also removed the decaying hierarchy, which was kind of nice just because it made the nobles really happy, and increased minimum tax, and then replace it for the restored hierarchy. This one gives max control everywhere and local proximity costs decrease everywhere, so it's I'm not sure whether I'd say it's better. Who can say? I wasn't actually aware that we would begin another situation, the Roman reconquest. The Eastern Roman state has always considered restoring the empire's territory its highest ideal. With the internal and external affairs of the Eastern Roman Empire settled, is destined to tread the path walked by countless previous Roman emperors. During the reconquest, we must constantly monitor revival zeal, which represents the degree of recognition amongst Romans from rulers to commoners for the narrative of restoring the empire's territory. Once revival zeal reaches 0, the Roman reconquest situation will end prematurely. So it looks like it's a bit of a race here. How much land can we conquer before the situation ends? The fate of Albanians. We'll attempt to assimilate Albanians into special shock troop types. I was intending to stop here because I wasn't aware there was another situation. This mod just keeps going with more and more content. But with that said, I am gonna stop here. We'll leave it here for today. If you haven't tried this mod, go play it right now. There's just so much content for Byzantium here, and it's a lot of fun. My glorious themes! For now though, this is the end of the video. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you think of this mod if you've played it. Go and try it yourself. But either way, thank you for watching, and see you next time.